I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we work on the echo?
I think that's you, Vicki.
Someone's got their sound on.
We're muted. You just got to turn your speaker off on your computer.
You all set? Yep, there we go.
That sounds better.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee to order. First thing I'll do is take attendance. Ken Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mike G?
Here.
Rob Garrity?
Here.
Brian Beachkowski?
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz? Speak up. We can't.
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. David Lutz here. We have a very short agenda tonight. We're going to hear from the school committee and the superintendent on the new version of the article that we reviewed a few weeks ago, as well as discuss the related article on the town or the school building committee. We have some minutes to approve, and I have to talk about a possible scheduling of a meeting on the master plan, but we can leave that till the end. Before we start with the schools, I feel obligated to issue an apology to the school committee and to the superintendent. When we met with them 3 weeks ago, I was not aware of, through my own fault, I was not aware of the tenor of the article that we passed that funded the feasibility study that they presented to us. As we voted on it at town meeting in spring of 2022, it was limited to an addition. So they were not exploring alternatives, which is why the conversation we had about alternatives probably went longer and much more difficult than I anticipated. So tonight we're going to hear about their article. I'd like to keep the discussion to the article itself and what will be then presented at town meeting. I don't want to expand into future options for the school and things like that. The select board voted to approve a new version of Article 5, which is now Article 6, I think. Let me double check that. No, it's Article 5 still, which I'll now turn over to the school committee and the superintendent to present.
Thank you very much, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to come back and talk about the revised article that the school committee voted on to bring forward. I think when we came before, we gave a brief overview of the project timeline and process. Can you hear me okay?
A little louder.
A little louder, okay. I'll try to be louder. So we gave a brief overview of the project timeline and process. Medora wanted to share a little bit from further on that before we get into. I did want to bring back, there were some questions that came up around demographic data, and I just wanted to kind of share the common data that we're looking at and then talk about why we're revising the article. Does that sound okay?
Will the demographic data be updated if the article goes forward as written? Will the demographic data be updated?
Yeah, part of our proposal was to update the graphic study, and I just wanted to articulate for the board a little bit more where the projections are off and what we're thinking is driving that, so that we can explain why we want to do the demographics and what new information that would consider.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. I'll be brief. I'm happy that we have a chance to come back before you, and we certainly appreciate the apology. We were a little surprised at the discussion surrounding alternative options, since we had been authorized only to explore adding on to the Freeman Kennedy School last time, but we're certainly happy to explore those further so that everyone who's a stakeholder in this process feels that it's been completely transparent and clear and has all the information they need to make a decision. Just by way of context, the school committee has been aware of and concerned about growing enrollment in the local schools for a number of years. The issue was originally studied by a space planning committee in 2017. Expansion of Freeman was identified as the most cost-effective long-term solution by that committee. The space study committee was not of school committee members. Those were individuals from the school, I think, on the committee, so I can't do it, but other stakeholders who came in and evaluated options and identified expansion as the most cost-effective and reasonable long-term solution for money was initially appropriated for the only expansion of Freeman Kennedy at the December 2017 special town meeting. You may recall that that was a banner attendance meeting, as it also involved the stretch code and marijuana licensing in town for new commercial industries. So that was a standing room only meeting where it was first discussed before the town. Subsequently, after a building study, additional enrollment and demographic studies were done in 2018. In 2022, the school committee submitted a warrant article seeking funding for feasibility, again, only of expansion of Freeman Kennedy. Advisory recommended approval of the warrant article, and it passed unanimously at town meeting. In the intervening timeframe, the project was bid for feasibility. A building subcommittee interviewed and evaluated, I think it was 6 architectural firms who bid for the project, ultimately selecting AI3. The full feasibility was completed timely by the selected architects. And subsequent to the closing of the study, we provided updates to, I think, the select board, the school committee, and had 2 public forums discussing why that option had been selected and what a expansion at Freeman Kennedy would look like. Essentially, the school committee has undertaken exhaustive due diligence in the process of reviewing expanding Freeman Kennedy. That has included committees that I have not sat on. I personally have been involved in it for 5 years. In that time frame, we have had committee members who have backgrounds in business, education, law, public service, town employees, municipal government. Everyone has had differing opinions on a number of topics, but there has generally been unanimous consensus that this is the best option for both the school and the town to have a fiscally responsible solution to a known and existing problem. The original intent of the committee was to come forward seeking design funding as a result of the feasibility we undertook as authorized by town meeting. That said, as I said at the outset, we understand, I think, as a committee and as individual residents of the town, that a project of the scope and size that we are contemplating is not insignificant, and that there are other significant capital needs and projects being undertaken by the town at this point. Bearing that in mind and taking into account some of the feedback we've received in recent months, we are bringing forward a revised warrant article seeking to undertake a feasibility study of potential alternative options. The one that has been discussed most heavily being the potential utilization of modular classrooms. Given my personal working knowledge of the district's needs, the properties that the school facilities are sited on, and the relative limitations of modular classrooms generally, I remain confident that expansion of Freeman Kennedy will be the most fiscally reasonable and responsible long-term solution for the town and the school district. However, I am certainly ready to be educated if there are other alternatives that may be viable and feasible. So the breakdown of what the feasibility study would look like, as far as what the funding request is, would include, I believe it's approximately $83,000 for an expanded feasibility to study the use of modular classrooms, some additional funding to look at potential alternatives to either expansion or modular classrooms. Some people have proposed using a third site, different building processes. We can certainly take a look at that. And then the remaining funds would be utilized for an updated demographic study. In closing, and I know Ingrid is going to speak to questions surrounding demographic studies in her presentation, I know that in our last meeting, a specific example of a district utilizing modular classrooms was discussed repeatedly. That school district is Hopkinton, which is not that far from us and is certainly wants to live in a lovely school district. It was mentioned on several occasions. I was personally curious, and I know Ingrid was as well, and so we reached out to Hopkinton and had some conversations with their business manager and their superintendent about the situation there and their use of modular classrooms. So Hopkinton in 2019, due to a significant enrollment increase and spacing crisis, spent $4.3 million for 8 modular classrooms, totaling 5,600 square feet. Breaking that down, that would be a 2019 cost per square foot of 767 square feet, $538,000 per classroom. Assuming Norfolk wanted 35,000 square feet, which is actually less than what we are requesting and what has been suggested by our architects as an appropriate solution to the problem. In 2019 dollars, that cost would be $27 million, using the cost per square foot. Assuming a very conservative post-pandemic increase in construction costs of 10%, the cost per square foot would rise to $844. 35,000 square feet would cost $30 million of modular space. If you wanted to take perhaps a more reasonable construction cost increase and go up to 20%, the cost would rise to $32 million for 35,000 square feet of modular classroom space. That's based on data that we retrieved. It's public information. It's not speculation. Obviously, what the actual escalated costs would be could vary, but that is a range that we think is on the conservative end to the more reasonable end. Some other points to note about that specific example. Hopkinton's classroom spaces in the modulars are described as undersized, each classroom being 700 square feet. In addition, the modular classrooms they added on have no bathroom facilities or plumbing. That would not be a feasible alternative for Norfolk, as we're talking about early education classrooms being sited there. We would have to do site work, we would have to do plumbing work, and we would have to build an associated early education playground to accommodate modulars that would increase the cost. So because that was raised in the last meeting, we wanted to be able to speak to it. That said, I'm finished.
Okay. I thought we were going to focus on the article as presented to us. I appreciate what you're saying. I'm hoping that doesn't color the future of this study that we're about to potentially vote on. So
absolutely not. I'm just giving the data because the data was raised in the last meeting that we had. I think it's only reasonable because it was presented.
We're not talking about that article anymore. We're talking about an article that's for us tonight.
And
Thank you.
I want to provide some context around why modulars aren't necessarily comparable.
But we're coming with an article to study.
Thank you. We're done. Rob, please go ahead and present on the article.
So the article that we presented tonight is seeking funding to expand the scope of the current feasibility study to include several things.
Can we speak up? It's hard to understand.
So the article that we're bringing forward tonight, can you hear now? Is that okay?
That's better.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is to expand the scope of the current feasibility study to explore potential alternate solutions to the enrollment situation at Freeman Kennedy. One part of that we are proposing is that we'd like to update our enrollment projection study and demographic study. The estimated cost of that would be between $15,000 and $20,000. The reason that we want to include the enrollment study as part of further feasibility is, as we mentioned at the last meeting, we had a full demographic study of the schools and community done. It was updated again in 2021-2022 by NESDEC. Initially, in the early years of that study, and you can just jump to the page that shows the demographics. Yep. In the early years of that study, the NESDEC predictions were tracking very closely to our actual realized enrollment. So the study was done in 2018-19. In 1920, they were projecting an increase and expecting us to see an enrollment around 916. We had 913 kids enroll. The following year, now remember, we closed in the spring of 2020 because of COVID. 2020-2021, NESDEC projected we'd see 965 students coming in, and we saw less than that. We saw 935. So as the school committee and we have been monitoring this enrollment projections to actuals in order to plan for the building project, we looked at that a little bit more closely, and I think I mentioned at that last meeting, we weren't sure how COVID was impacting enrollment. But what we did note, if you look to the right side of that, is that our students that were choosing or opting, families opting to homeschool students, families enrolling in private and charter school increased during that year. This is not unique to Norfolk. This is a national and state trend. So you'll see we actually had an additional 27 students in Norfolk. So the school-age population is trending exactly aligned with the NESDEC projections. What's different is that not all of those new students are enrolling with us. So you'll see again, the net went up by, we did see an enrollment increase of 935 and 27 additional students that came to Norfolk that did not enroll. We weren't sure how COVID was impacting that, but that trend continued. The following year, we saw we saw that same number. It was 26 students remain out of district. And then that number went up again in 2020-23 with 54 additional students. So when you look at the actual enrollment plus the growth in the homeschool and private school populations, our enrollment projections are trending very close to what NESDEC predicted. What we need to understand, and the state and national government are watching this too, because our trends, they're seeing a 30% nationally increase in homeschool and about a 7 to 8% increase in private placements. Almost all of ours are religious-based. The students are enrolling in Mercy Mount, Bethany Christian Academy. I'd have to look, but they're almost all private religious faith-based schools, as are our homeschool programs. On the national level, this data spiked in 2022-23 and is now starting to come down. So we don't know whether we are going to see more of these students entering the Norfolk schools, but it's something we need to study further. Additionally, I did speak with Rich McCarthy, and home sales in the developments are slowing down because of inflation. So some of the houses that we thought would come on the market have not hit yet. So we have some questions. We are out of space at H. Olive Day. I can share some information with you about that. We have seen H. Olive Day, if you look at the next chart, you can skip the one before it. Our enrollment at H. Olive Day since 2012-13 has gone up by 117 students. We do have full-day kindergarten, so we had 5 classrooms for kindergarten. We now have 8. We had 5 classrooms for preschool. We now have 6. That's artificially capped. Did you want to jump to the age or do you want? It's artificially capped because we have a waiting list for pre-K program growing from 30 to 75 families. We can't bring anybody in because we have nowhere to put an expanded preschool. So we have 5 preschools that are now 6 preschools. We've added 2 additional homeroom classrooms beyond the 3 kindergarten classrooms. We've added a social emotional learning special education program. Back in 2013, we didn't have any students that were non-native English speakers. We now have 47, so we had to add a space for English language instruction that's required by the state. So we are out of space there. Demographic predictions are expecting enrollment to hit more over the next 5 years at Freeman Kennedy, based on the houses that are coming on the market, the size of the homes, the locations of the homes, plus our 2 largest classes currently are 3rd grade and kindergarten. Our next largest is 2nd. Those classrooms are going to be rolling up to Freeman Kennedy. At Freeman Kennedy, because we built with MSBA, or you built because I wasn't here at the time, school was built, you can only build for the current population. So the school opened at capacity. It was built for the students that you had enrolled at the time. At Freeman, we also had to add another special education program, an EL classroom instructional space. So there have been some changes. We've converted a closet to an office space for a social worker and a psychologist. So you're in a position where we're high, but we don't understand what's driving the change in trends. So our recommendation was to update and redo the enrollment study so that we could further explore those and Norfolk could better predict what you will see in the next 5 years. Although we know already we have a critical space shortage. So the warrant article we're proposing would include the potential exploration of a modular solution. Again, as Modora said, we are not sure that is going to, or we don't believe that it's going to be more cost effective, but we want to fully vet that because we think it's important for the community and public to have that information before voting to move forward with design. So the article includes about $15,000 to $20,000 for updated demographic study, $83,000 for the study of modular solutions, which would be a couple of different modular scenarios, a single-story or a two-story modular addition, as well as some additional funding should the town have a third option, or the appointed committee of school and town members decide that there's a third option that we want to fully explore. Again, we think the solution has to address needs at two different schools.
I think too, I'm assuming everyone understands this, but for the sake of ultimate clarity and what keeps me up at night, every one of those students who is currently going to private school or being homeschooled could decide tomorrow that they want to come and attend our public schools. And we would have,
We have no space.
We would have
We're
nowhere to
hoping
put
they'll wait a little bit.
Fair enough,
But,
I understand. So a couple questions for you. So quick math. First of all, I did watch this selectmen's meeting when they voted on this. There was no number then, so they voted on the language
Yes.
without having a number. Have you talked to?
I have talked to Justin. What we did,
And what are you asking for?
$150,000.
Okay, and your numbers here are 103-ish?
Yep, and leaving some remaining funds available should the
For the
committee
third
choose to
option.
look at leased space or a potential third site. We don't think that those are
Sure.
really viable, but we'll leave that up to the committee. We didn't want to not have, and obviously, if the committee opts not to do that, then we wouldn't need the full 150.
And then the follow-up question is obviously that Article 6, which is the creation of the building committee,
Yep.
is essential to this next phase of the study, if you
We
want to
feel
put it
at
that
this
way.
point that it would be in the best interest of everybody to move forward with appointing a committee that has membership from the schools as well as the town to oversee the expanded feasibility study so that we make sure all parties have the same information and that when we come forward with any changes or recommendations in the spring, that has gone through a formal building committee process. So that's Article 6.
And for the other committee members, I did speak with Justin. I didn't have a number at the time, but there's free cash they were prepared to set it aside for this study. So, and we talked about the free cash at our last meeting. There is room there for that to happen, so.
Yeah, so it would not be a borrowing. He said that
Right.
there was revenue available.
I'll open it up to questions from the committee members. Brian?
I do have a question on the updated demographic projection. What decision will that updated study inform? Because if it's happening parallel to these feasibilities, it won't inform the feasibility.
So I envision the demographic study being the first course of action, that we contract with somebody to get that done first prior to moving into the next stage of the feasibility. Our original recommendation was to do that because you can modify the scope and the size of any modular solution or brick and mortar solution. So first course would be to appoint a building committee. Second would be to interview demographers and hire someone to do that study. And following that, move into the modular solution and determine if there's anything else the town would want to vet.
And then when we did the update in 21, 22, how long does it take them to do the demographic study?
Well, it's going to depend on what the committee chooses to go forward with the demographer. If we use NASDAQ again, then they have a lot of history with the town. They've worked with Rich McCarthy. They have all of the housing data. They have updates, so it would be more expeditious in terms of timeline. If we go with another agency, it took a couple of months to do the study from ground up.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
I apologize. NASDAQ is an agency, or is it a
Yes,
company?
and they have they have a professional demography service that they provide to schools and towns.
But it's some sort of government agency?
Yep.
Okay.
And they actually did Hopkinton study.
They did do Hopkinton
This
studies.
is sort of a niche market that they do a lot of work
I'm sure
in
you
schools.
explained this last time, but I...
No, it's okay.
All right. Anyone else have a question? Yes, Ken.
Comment and a question. My comment is, no matter what happens, I feel like we're set up for the same situation because we can only build to today's number. So we spend lots of money down the road and we're building to today's number, but not the number 5 years from now. So
Well, let me add to that. That was a restriction when you built with the Mass School Building Authority because
Right.
they were co-funding. This project is not going to have MSBA funding, so the town can build for
Oh, because I was
whatever.
reading in here where it talked about where We're able to procure funding from the MSBA, but is that just for?
That was last year when
Okay.
we went to town. We were trying, we were declined again, and because.
So we can actually build potentially
You
for
can
what
build
we,
Yeah.
what we
what you
think we
want.
actually need.
Yes.
So
There's a
I'm-
nugget of good in the fact that we're not getting state money.
Right, we can actually, so we don't
nugget.
revisit this in 5 years, and then in 10 years. and-
Absolutely.
So my question on the 83,000 is, who are we giving that to?
So that, we got a price from AI3 who did this feasibility study for the brick and mortar. They do work with modulars. They're in Watertown right now. In the original bid specs, we left the capacity to expand the scope of the study without rebidding the project. So the building committee could choose to have AI3 do this next phase without losing time for rebidding. They are, again, we interviewed the 6 top firms in the state, and they were clearly up far ahead. So I would be very
No, I
comfortable
see
with
on
them.
MSBA, they do a lot. I guess my question is this. It's like, to me, I feel like it's like walking to a car dealer and saying, should I buy the new car or the used car? And they're going to sell me whatever makes them the most profit. Is this the kind of situation where are they an architect or are
They're
they?
an architect and engineering firm, and they would not be guaranteed the work because we would have to publicly bid the construction of the next phase of the project. They were only awarded the bid for feasibility.
But if they came back and said modular's the way to go, this is by far, do they even?
They don't have a vested interest in a modular solution or a vendor.
Bifurcated, there's no,
Yeah.
I think that came up at the last meeting.
But I guess that's the question. Would they even be able to bid for modular? Is that something they even deal with?
They do.
Okay.
They work quite frequently with modular solutions.
That's why I make sure that we're not
Yeah.
asking them to do a study on modular,
No.
but all they do is new construction. They're going to say, oh, no, you don't want that. You want what
They
we
do
actually
both.
can do.
They
Okay.
do both, and they often do blended, because in a project where you are doing occupied construction, you have a temporary modular. So they are very fluid in both.
Okay.
But the
Makes
building
sense.
committee, once we appoint, could choose to interview and bid this out. That will slow the process down because there's a 30-day timeline. You have to post the bid. We didn't get any
I mean, I
successful
was going
bids
to
in our
say,
first round.
it would be, when we initially bid this feasibility, we had 0 applicants. We had to go through a second round of bids because it's not a
It's a
huge
small project.
And so to the extent that there is building happening across the Commonwealth, it's not necessarily, something that folks want to spend their time going through the bid process for. So we did, that delayed us probably 60 days on the original feasibility, if not
Absolutely.
a little bit more, and time became an issue.
But a building committee, again, AI3, if they were asked to do this, they work regularly with the building committee. So you could direct the course of that study. You can bring questions and kind of steer it in the way that you're looking for it to go. So.
Does anyone else have any other? Yes, Rob.
So I just want to clarify, NISDEC is not a government agency. They're a
No,
private
they're
non-for-profit.
yes.
Just because you might have,
Okay,
you asked the question.
Sorry, they're, yes.
That's where I was heading. Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you. All right,
That's okay.
Mike.
So what is the revised timeline now, do you think? What's your,
Well, if town meeting votes to appropriate the additional scope, then I think the first thing would be to appoint the building committee. Hopefully get that done within 4 weeks. Hire a demographer. We'd like to have this next phase of the feasibility done before Springtown meeting so
Okay.
that we can come with another recommendation to the board at that time.
all right, that's
So we're
okay.
hoping to consolidate it and do it within the 6 months. Again, if modulars are being placed at the Freeman, we've already done a lot of site work, testing, groundwater, so some of that would not be repeated.
Right, we talked about that, but a lot of the, I don't want to call it extraneous, but a lot of the sort of standard stuff relative to the site is it's been done, so.
Yeah.
It's just the construction portion of it. Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone in the audience have a question or anything? Yes, sir.
I do have a
Go.
couple comments on the question. My name is Paul Denver.
Hold on. We gotta get a microphone for you.
You need a mic so you can be
So the people at home can
recorded
hear.
for
Just right
posterity.
over here.
I don't normally need a microphone, but that's great. That's fine. Thank you. I live at 16 Winterberry Way. I I applaud the addressing of the modular solution, whether positive or negative, ultimately, and reviewing the demographics. I do want to say that a few of us attended a meeting at the Freeman Kennedy School maybe 7 months ago. I forget exactly when it was, and I had a note, and we asked a couple of questions. I certainly about the feasibility of modulars, because the costs of construction that were discussed were really very high, higher than people had anticipated before, I think. And my notes indicate that the cost of the modulars, and I don't recall how many individuals there were, individual modulars, was $2.5 million and a rental cost of about $900,000, I think, for 5 years. I'm not sure about that. But in any event, the costs of the modulars was certainly an element in causing me to be interested in pursuing that particular solution. And I had a lot of experience with modulars in Needham, where I was on the school committee for about 10 years, and we bought many modulars, and most of them, I can tell from experience recently, are still in use and serving very well. So I think the modulars may well be a good solution. Anyway, I applaud your moving in that direction. One of the questions I have is about the establishment of the building committee, though, and it's just a tactical issue or logistical issue. You're going to have many new people on the building committee who are going to have to get up to speed, and I don't know how that need will fit in with the need to get the study done of both the modulars and the enrollment. It may well delay that for some period of time. It seems to me you'll have members of a new building committee who will have to digest the feasibility study that was published in May of 2023, 243 pages, I can count them, and ask many questions of the school committee, I think, even before maybe committing to a particular company for a study of modulars and enrollment. Anyway, I think it might be more useful to have the administration kind of run that purchase if it makes sense politically. I don't know whether it does. So I think that this is an advance, but I wonder whether the building committee should be addressed, establishment should be addressed at the town meeting. I'm a little bit concerned about the delay. And in terms of the enrollment, can you give a little more detail about exactly how an enrollment study would address this issue of different numbers of kids going to other schools? I mean, what is going to lead to a probably or a probable accurate study of where our numbers are going to be when we have these numbers which have moved around quite a bit? I mean, do these studies typically assume that kids are going to come back to the schools? Do they have questionnaires? Do they ask? Okay.
I think one of the things that the purpose of redoing the demographic study is basically that the numbers for the last 3 or 4 years have been somewhat or radically changed as a result of the COVID situation. I'm hoping that when we go out to get the demographics updated, that'll be, and I think that the superintendent began to address that. That is obviously now part of a lot of people looking at this stuff because it's different than it was 3 years ago. You can't look at the same population with the same assumptions. So the assumptions have changed. And I would hope that the new demographic study is working under some sort of new assumptions that are hopefully becoming standard practice in this world, because they weren't 3 years ago. This kind of exodus from a public school situation was not what was going on in 2020. It certainly is now, obviously, from the numbers. So I think that's hope. I'm hoping, and I think that was a sense. The other thing is that the demographics, the original demographics are in fact now 4 or 5 years old now, let alone 2 or 3 years from now when we actually begin construction, if we get to that point. So getting them up to date now is another important aspect of this whole thing, from my perspective, so.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I was just concerned as to how, in fact, the study of demographics would have changed in that because of the factors you mentioned, and I guess we'll see.
I think that's, unfortunately, that everyone's going to see. I
Okay.
think the superintendent mentioned that on a statewide level and a national level, everyone's wondering about these questions because of what we've just gone through, so.
And there are a lot of state and national studies happening now to try to, where there are family interviews. There's a lot of different models out there that I would expect a new demographer to consider.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Rob, did you have a follow-up?
So,
Yeah.
so Ingrid, Superintendent, these numbers don't have pre-K on them, do they?
No, and that's what I had shared at the beginning. So our pre-K enrollment has been pretty steady, around 65 students. We only provide programming right now to students who we're legally required to educate as of their third birthday, and that's students with disabilities and their peer models. So we run.
Yep, go ahead.
So we run an integrated preschool classroom. You can find the data if you add about 65 students. That will give you the full enrollment. The reason I don't have that in there is because it doesn't accurately reflect need in preschool. Our wait list of families looking for preschool programming has gone from 30 to about 75.
Right.
That's not captured. It's artificially capped by the space that we have available.
So-
We did have to reduce the number of traditional peers that we're bringing in the last 2 years because the types of special educational needs some of our students have are more significant, and so we have some non-integrated classrooms. So preschool numbers are a little bit misleading, that's why.
Okay. And the third sheet in there with the HOD number, that also doesn't have pre-K, but still shows 117 gain.
117
which is partially, 2012, we were still doing half-day, right?
2012, but we count all the kids, whether they come
You only
full or
count them
half.
once, you don't
We
count
only
them
count them
twice.
once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't count them as half when they're
I don't count them as a half, no.
All right, so we're like 117 up.
Yeah.
Because,
And that's starting to roll up to Freeman.
and K through, everything, K through 6, you can't deny kids.
No.
But you can put kids on a waiting list for pre-K, so that,
can.
you can control that.
Yeah.
But half of the addition is for pre-K.
Yeah, because as the overall population is growing, we are seeing the level, our special ed population is growing proportionally. So we have added a preschool classroom to meet the needs. So we went from 5 to 6 to meet the needs of students. But if we receive another 150 students over the next year, we can assume that there's going to be a similar growth in pre-K, and we will have to add pre-K classrooms. So that's why.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Actually, can you hold on a sec? I never acknowledged one of our members is online. Jonathan, do you have any questions before? Apologize, Ed. I can't see him, so I don't know if he's saying yes or not.
We're trying to quit out so you can. Yeah, because all it's showing is our screen, so they can't.
Do you have any questions, Jonathan?
No
Okay, thank you.
questions.
Ed, please.
Ed Head at 138 Red Maple Run. I just wanted to follow up on a point that Paul raised about the building committee. It just seems to me like a rush to get a building committee when we're still doing feasibility studies. So I guess the question is, now we're in November and town meeting next spring is May. What's a building committee going to do or accomplish? What's the rush to get it ready for next spring's town meeting? What's it going to do? What's the urgency?
Well, a couple of things. The building committee would be appointed, and so we will have members from the school administration on that. We will have members from the town who have followed this study. So in the last building committee that we had when we built Freeman, we had the town manager, we had the facilities director for schools and towns, we had Bob Bullock was part of that, the representative from the school committee, representative from school administration, all of whom have followed the process. And are very up to date on where we are. We would want to bring in probably someone with some engineering background. We might want to bring in someone with a finance background. But those would be appointed, and we would make an effort to individually meet and bring people up to speed on where we are. The value of it is, I know you guys have been great about attending our community forums. You can see that you're an audience of 3. We don't get people out. We've had 4 school committee presentations on this, 2 community forums, 2 town meetings, and we're hearing, why didn't we know there was a building project? So I feel like it's in the best interest of the town to have many people invested and at the table sharing this information out, which is why we're recommending that, because I don't want to come back in May and have people say, well, we didn't know this was a concern, or we didn't have ways to get involved.
It almost sounds like a biased building committee when you have people who are already invested in the process. I just think back at the...
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
The town has a bylaw on how building committees are appointed. So
Right.
they're going to be appointed by invested parties, including the select board.
Right,
So
okay.
that a building committee is automatically biased based on, if you want to put it that way.
I think of the fire
Based on their
department, I
appointment.
thought was a
They were-
balanced committee.
And hopefully the appointing authorities take that as seriously as they took the fire, and I believe you served on the fire building committee, didn't you?
No, I didn't,
Okay,
no.
all right, but you followed it closely, I know, so. I don't think you can prejudge the committee before they're appointed, so.
Just going
we
by
have a
what
bylaw
Dr.
that covers
Alardi
how these
just
building
pointed
committees are
out, that's all.
appointed.
But I think all of the members of the committee, as well as the school committee, I mean, we brought forward a recommendation here because we believe it was the most cost-effective. If we find something different in the feasibility, our interest is preserving strong educational programming for all of the children and making sure we have appropriate educational spaces. Without going on a tangent, when we priced out those modulars, I think, as Medora presented, the ones in Hopkinton would equate, they would be $30 million. We're proposing an addition that's with soft cost 36. They have a 20-year lifespan. We want to study that. We want to look at there's different manufacturers, there's different models, but we did not bring this forward because we're vested in a building project. We brought it forward because at the time, based on the data we had, it appeared to be the most cost-effective solution for the town.
Thank you.
And if I could, just for 60
I don't want,
seconds.
actually, I'm.
Ready to move.
If you have anything new to add, either Medora or Paul?
I just wanted to, can we get a copy of what is now the proposal that will go to town meeting for Article
you got it
5?
in the mail.
Actually got it in the mail.
The warrant came.
Oh, we
And if
did?
you pull it up, we can.
It was on our, it's been posted on this town's
Yeah.
website. It's the warrant article.
Yeah, it made the warrant.
Oh, it came today.
Well, there you go. So it's Article 5 is what you're looking at.
I just put it up too, if it's helpful.
For the building committee,
Oh,
right?
sorry.
No, Article 5 for the study.
Study, 6 for the
Article
building
6 for the
committee.
building committee.
My fault, thank
That's
you.
no worries. I mean, I didn't know
asked
that
the
they had
same
arrived
question
today
today.
either, so.
I have
My
it.
colleagues brought theirs, which is the only reason I know they had arrived in the mail, so. Does anyone have any more questions? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you.
Sorry to bring you back out on a rainy, miserable
No,
night.
it wasn't
The day
raining when I
after.
got here. Has that changed?
It was a little sleety when I was leaving my house, so I don't know.
It's good, it's fine.
So we have 2 articles before us that we should take a position on or not. But the Article 5, as we discussed tonight, is $150,000 for this work. The select board has received that information. They did vote in favor of it unanimously in a very, very short discussion.
Where's the other 75 coming from?
What do you mean?
On here it says.
No, that was the old one.
This is the old one, okay.
Yeah, that was the original
So
one.
it's 20, it's up to
Yeah,
20
yeah.
for the demographics, 83 for the other thing, and then a cushion. Yeah.
I mean, not slide.
Could we take these conversations outside? Thank you. Ma'am? Yeah, please, if you need to take it outside. So, go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry, I was
No,
calm us down.
that explains it, so, yeah.
I'm entertaining a motion right now on Article 5.
One more point, I guess, of clarification. So that's coming from free cash, which this will not be included with the rest of the free cash transfers?
Because it's not a capital
Right,
expenditure.
yeah. Well, there's other.
Well, we also did the budget
Right.
transfer, but that's within department.
Yes.
Pre-existing budgets. This is a new
It's a
item.
new item.
Right.
Those are
and
existing
it's-
line items that get tweaked.
We voted on those line items in the spring. We're just moving money around in those line items. This is essentially a new line item.
So do we any longer have an item to move money from free cash to reserve fund?
Yes.
And has this impacted those dollar amount of the free
It will
cash
reduce what
transfer?
gets moved into the stabilization fund, essentially.
At the end of the fiscal year, and
We do it now because
It won't,
it's certified free cash as of now.
I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure.
They might have had another 150 in free cash that they hadn't.
I don't,
Well, that's my question.
I think so. It
Is
was
this coming
so-
at the expense of stabilization?
I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that what we saw was or going into the stabilization fund. So the stabilization fund amount will go down. I believe, and I can't answer that for sure, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, if
The
they
way that
appropriated
works.
every
Right.
penny.
And actually, hold on, I actually have the budget numbers here. Maybe. I had them.
As well as free cash, it's not free cash.
It's a bad term, isn't it? It's a really bad term. I'm sorry.
Undesignated, right.
That's a better term, Rob. Doesn't trip off the tongue though, does it?
Surplus.
Sorry, gentlemen.
I don't know that you can answer it unless you have, if you wrote in your note what they certified, which I had in my notebook, but
I
unfortunately it's
did.
not here.
And I wrote it on the piece of paper that God gave me.
I might have that.
I feel like 1.86 or 1.96 rings in my head is,
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was. That's, damn it. Sorry, gentlemen. I thought I had it in here. So, any further discussion on this?
I'm glad they'll put the modular discussion to bed. I personally think modulars only, if you're dealing with a bomb, they don't make sense otherwise. This is a structural change in the way we do the system.
Interestingly enough, and arguably enough, some modulars are now being built as permanent buildings and are given the same lifespan as a regular school. So,
War Department.
what? Quonset huts. They're all going to be in Quonset huts, Rob. But in fact, yeah, so that's part of the discussion. There's some confusion on that too, is that you're right on that. But anyways,
I would make a motion to approve, recommend Article 5.
okay. So I have a second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor of that? I have to take a roll call. Jonathan Hurwitz?
aye.
Ken Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Mike G?
Aye.
Brian Beachkowski?
Aye.
Rob Garrity?
Aye.
Dave Lutz, aye. We now have the building committee.
I am troubled by the language that in Article 5, we're going to vote on something that's overseen by a building committee we don't create until Article 6.
So I don't
think that's how it works.
That's how it works. The building committee oversees architectural design, not the.
But I think that the school department would be the contractor for the study. They have to be.
Rewind for a second. I didn't understand Rob's qualm.
So,
I missed
Article
the end
5
of it.
reads, right, to see if the town votes.
6, you're talking about.
Article
No,
5, reading
Oh,
article.
I see, okay.
Vote blah, 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 to be expended under the direction of the Norfolk School Building Committee to expand the scope of the recently feasible. And Article 6 creates the Norfolk School Building Committee. So if town meeting goes sideways and doesn't approve Article 6, we got to go back and amend
money in
Article 5.
5.
Yeah,
Dave,
I would not.
The money is being expended under the direction
Right,
of.
I
If there's
understand that.
no this, which is created later, then you can't
Okay. No,
expend.
I don't understand your qualm.
Because it's bad.
So my qualm
Ordering
is
of
this.
the-
Hold on.
I
We don't-
agree.
It doesn't change Article 5 if we vote yes or no on Article 6.
Then who's expending the money? Can you tell
The
me?
school committee, 'cause
There-
that's what
no,
it says right
Norfolk
there.
School Building Committee. That's what's created in Article 6.
Sorry.
Right. This is an issue, and less about that and more about our prior feasibility studies were not run by a building committee. They were run through.
It was run by the school
normal-
committee, because I looked up the article,
I think one of the things the school committee has raised
Yeah.
is that, and we've heard it from both of some of our questioning, is that there's a sense that the school committee is invested in addition to the school.
Yeah.
And I think they're hoping to put some distance between
Yeah, I
them
think
and the
involving more
decision on
constituencies,
what
yeah.
happens
Yeah.
as a result of the feasibility study.
And if I was trying to get this done, I would do that too. Could expand your pool of supporters. Right? That makes a lot of sense. It's sort of a co-option. It creates this sense of inevitability. Now we have a school committee, a building committee, then they got to build something. You know, you don't create a building committee to not build things. So I get that, and I'll probably vote for the whole thing. I'm just saying that's.
Do you want to, do we want to make a motion that we take Article 6 out of order?
I see. That's what I was thinking. If we do it that night, we pull Article 6 ahead of 5. Yeah, the whole debate up front.
But the counter is, what if you create a committee and then don't appropriate them money
They'll
to,
come
so
back.
it's the,
They'll come back in the spring when there are more people present, and they'll do homework.
Don't be so cynical about that.
I'm not being cynical. No, that's not cynical. That's what you do in legislative.
No. So,
My question is, why do they even say who's doing it? I mean, the school committee can defer it down to the school building committee, right? Like,
I don't think they can. Actually, I think the school committee is consciously trying to get it off their plate.
Agree.
For the reasons I said, to be
Agree.
perfectly frank, is they don't want to have to do this again.
My feeling is that if somebody has this qualm that this could go sideways, that somebody bring it up with town council or whoever the appropriate person is and have them deal with it at town meeting if they need to.
And if they vote for 5, they're going to vote for 6. Right? If 5 passes, 6 will pass.
Right, it's all going to happen.
Or we could offer an amendment,
I'm
just
just
strike the word
being-
building from that.
I'm just being.
But I mean, why would we want to
Or
write?
a successor organization or something like that. We could amend it.
Well, I mean, why not leave that to an expert, like a lawyer or something?
Like me?
Well, maybe you.
kidding.
I'm just saying, we could try to solve this problem if we don't even know it exists, I guess that's.
That's right.
It's something to ask the moderator later.
So what are we going to do with Article 6 then?
Well, so I move to approve Article 6 as written in the warrant.
second.
All in favor? I'm going to go this way. Brian Beachkowski.
Aye.
Rob Garrity.
Aye.
Mike G.
Aye.
Ken Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Aye.
David Lutz, aye. I will discuss this with the moderator, and he'll bring it up with town council. We'll talk about, or I'll talk to the administrator and the moderator about.
Because until you got 6 passed, you
I
don't
understand
have
what
an
you're
entity.
saying. Right, yes, and I
Can we
understand that
even
we
write the
usually
article?
stage this, we usually stage it differently, and I think no one's considered this, Rob, so.
Yeah, no, I
thank
think it's
you
an
for-
interesting point. It should raise- yeah.
Rob picked up on something that our highly paid town council failed to pick up on, so.
It's years of lobbying the legislature.
So we're done with that. Who would want to be, someone has to present these at town meeting and be prepared to orally present what we normally write up in the warrant. You don't have any others, that's why, Mike. Oh, you do have others, never mind.
I'm the one without others.
Brian,
Yeah, that's fine.
I am, okay, good.
you comfortable with that?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And you'd be a reformed skeptic, so
He's not a reform skeptic.
you'd be an unreformed skeptic.
We have 2 other things, minutes, which Brian did present, but I want to raise with you folks, we've been asked by the town planner to have a meeting to hear a briefing on the status of the master plan process. I would like that to happen. I am concerned that we're going to schedule a meeting and we'll not get a quorum, which basically means we can't have the briefing. So I've been trying to push them on, we can't have the briefing.
Of course
but
we can.
I don't want to do that. I'd rather just have the briefing and not schedule a meeting, but I don't think I need to get back to the town planner. Can I have a sort of a show of hands who would be interested in a briefing, an hour-long briefing on the town master plan?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Jonathan's pondering whether he wants to, there we go, okay, all right.
No, it's a question.
Yes.
Is there anything actionable for us out of that?
No, it
Or
literally
it
is just a briefing. It's just a briefing, which is why if we don't get a quorum, we can still have I just don't understand why they want it to be a formal meeting. And there's nothing in the planning process or our vote on it that required them to do this, but I think they saw us as the group that was paying the most attention to it. And I want to make sure we're up to speed on that. So, because they are basically closing in on starting to wrap it up. So I think they want to give us a sense of where they're at before they begin to actually finalize the drafting of it. So I won't pick a date right now. I'll send some dates out, hopefully get a quorum. It'll be after town meeting at this point and before the holiday season kicks into full gear, which means it'll be after Thanksgiving, but before the middle of December kind of thing.
That's Hanukkah.
I apologize. I'll have to look at my holiday calendar list before I set the date. Lastly, we have minutes.
I circulated the 17th of October for review. I thought they were well done.
There's October 4th and October 11th, because they didn't vote last time because.
You weren't here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
okay.
So you,
Have I seen those?
You did send them out, but it was shortly before the meeting.
Oh, that's right. That was
And you weren't
while I
here.
was out, and I forwarded them without reading them. So I will abstain from those votes because
we're going to have to hold off on the 4th.
We don't have to. I've circulated them, so everyone else who's read them can take a vote. I will just.
So you were here for one of them, though.
I was, but I have not read them.
Then we can't vote on them if you haven't read them. Which one?
true?
You haven't read the 4th.
Right. The
So we have
17th
to-
I have.
we're gonna wait.
And I don't know about the 11th.
So I haven't done the 17th yet, but the
The
11th.
11th is the one you
I
sent
did.
out and you read. Okay.
I missed.
But you
missed
weren't
that. That's
here.
right. I was here for the 11th.
Okay, then you can make a motion on that.
Right. Oh, that's what I thought I did. Okay. I move to approve the October 11th minutes as I circulated.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Jonathan Hurwitz?
Aye.
Ken Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Mike G? Rob Garrity?
Aye.
Brian Beachkowski?
Aye.
David Lutz, aye.
And in the 4th, we are not able to vote on?
Because you didn't read them. No one's read them.
Well, I wouldn't guarantee
you're
that no one's
presuming.
read them.
Sent them out before the last meeting.
2 weeks ago,
At the
I sent them out.
time,
I would like the clerk to read them before we vote on them. Sorry. I didn't mean to do it that way. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but,
Not trying, but he is.
Yeah.
because I trust your judgment. Which may be a misplaced trust at this point, but.
Which makes me think that, yes, delegate
We
your
will
reading
be-
to me.
By the way, our first meeting in January will be an organizational meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I do try to read the minutes, but I did not read those because we got them right before and then I
Right.
completely
And then we
forgot
didn't
about
deal
them.
with them, so, all right.
So, yeah.
I believe we have nothing more pending before the committee. I will take a motion to adjourn.
to adjourn.
Hold on a sec, actually. Ed? Yes, sir.
I just want to raise a point. I think it was 2 weeks ago, it might have been the 17th before, but I'm not sure of the date. The audio on your meeting was so bad that it was inaudible, and even the closed caption was completely scrambled and garbled. I don't know if you were made aware of that.
I don't think, I have not heard that.
That was the one where I was remote, and it was tough to hear. I had earbuds in, and it was a struggle. But
I
I think that was at the other.
Yeah, we were at the, that was did you hear anything about that, or?
Justin sent an email letting us know that there was a complaint about the
Okay.
audio being difficult. But during the meeting, you guys were participating remotely. We didn't know there were additional issues to be fixed at that point.
That was my complaint. I wrote to him because I said it was impossible to follow the oral discussion, and the closed captions were terribly garbled. And the three of us actually were watching it. We deserve credit for that. I think medal for that. And we all bailed out after about a half hour because it was so painful.
Is that why you're here tonight? Because you didn't want to?
Because we love the process.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, too.
And I sent an email to Justin about it.
Okay.
And, I was a little bit of
Yeah.
a wise guy. I said, "Is this any way to run a democracy?"
May I ask a serious question, if you don't mind? We've been at NCTV on a number of occasions. Most of our meetings have been at NCTV, except for this cycle. Have you ever seen a problem like that before with any of our meetings down there?
Not like that.
Okay, all right.
It was all.
It started right
Hopefully-
from the get-go, there was no audio.
Yeah, hopefully it's, I remember that at the beginning, and I thought we spent a lot of time trying to
Glad it
resolve
was
that.
Solved, so.
But I thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And the recording on NCTV that's been posted, from what I watched the first few minutes of it, the audio on the recording that's on YouTube is fine. So hopefully if there's anything that you wanted to,
That's interesting. I don't know how that is done. Because
I think they record it separately from what,
well, the recording in the green room is the Zoom recording.
Right.
It's not, there's no additional camera in there, it's just the recording of the Zoom. So
Alright.
if you wanted to see what you missed, and there's also some kind of closed captioning on the YouTube video as well, but I don't know how accurate it is, but.
We only pulled up the closed caption because we couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
I think that's just AI, isn't it? That they're trying to read,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is Google.
Yeah,
That's what I assume.
yeah.
thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Thanks. Motion to adjourn? Okay.
I think we
we
had
already
one.
did.
Yeah, we already
Did?
had one.
Okay, and that whole
No, we didn't.
discussion was,
I moved
Off
to
the
adjourn.
all right, we've,
I
okay.
I don't think we
Rob,
voted.
motion to adjourn, we're adjourned.
What, town meeting, do we sit somewhere special, get there?
Yes, we sit down, there's a nice table up. Rob, would you do me a favor, since I almost didn't get off the floor, would you mind unplugging that?